Morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to Forums That Matter, a community service of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Cleveland. My name is Laura Christian Imrononi, a member of the Forum Committee here and coordinator for today's discussion. We're very happy to have everybody here in person and also our valued virtual attendees. Our topic today is Women Changemakers, Shaping the Political Landscape, a timely topic. We'll have question and answers for our speakers from about 9:30 until 9:55. Debbie Wright and Nancy Burkle will provide a mic for our in-person attendees. We ask our virtual audience to type questions in the Q&A box. If you're here in person, please be sure your phone is off or in airplane mode. This program is recorded and will be available in a few days on our website at uniocleveland.org. So both our speakers, Sue Dean Dyke and Katie Paris, have worked hard for many years to increase voter turnout in Northeastern Ohio. Katie Paris is both a Shaker mom and a longstanding political organizer. Before founding Red, Wine, and Blue in early 2019, Katie helped launch Media Matters and Faith in Public Life in Washington, D.C. She caught the attention of the national media just days before the 2020 election, when Red, Wine, and Blue had grown from a one-woman shop to a community of tens of thousands, and I imagine some are here today. He was profiled in both an episode of The Daily and New York Times front page. Katie has been featured on the front page of the Washington Post, Good Morning America, and PBS. We'll hear from Katie soon, just after our first speaker, Sue Dean Dyke. Sue previously served as a human resources professional in the business sector. And for several years, Sue has been a voter advocate, community organizer, activist, and volunteer. Sue has organized efforts for petition drives and campaigns to end gerrymandering and restore abortion rights in Ohio. She was the founder of Mobilize the Vote NEO in 2019, a group that fights corruption in Ohio government, as well as working to improve voter turnout. Sue is married with 2 adult children and lives in Cleveland Heights. Sue, we look forward to hearing more.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for being here. So it's kind of funny. This is like full circle. Katie and I used to work out at the same time, and it was usually just us. Yeah, right. It was a class that we would, like a HIIT class or whatever. And so we've known each other a long time. But what I want to do today is to just tell you a little bit about what we do. It'll give you a little bit of background of how I got here and we have lots of volunteers, people that I recognize that have done work with us in here today. And also some of the changes that we think or some of the things that we think that we've impacted to change things here in Ohio. The most important thing about what we do is we are a 100% volunteer organization. No one gets paid, although we've been accused lately of being paid. We've been accused of being dark money by the press.
Marino.
And Bernie Marino especially. And we'll tell you if you have questions about how we got there, we'll let you know when you ask the question. But anyway, so Mobilize the Vote is very, very focused on turnout of primarily disenfranchised or low information voters. They also tend to be lower income or very young. So those are kind of the people that we focus on trying to turn out. We're also known for our volunteer training. We do a lot of voter registration and voter engagement. But the key is, again, removing obstacles to voting, because every year there are multiple increased obstacles that are put in front of us by Frank LaRose. and people in Columbus. So we're constantly having to pivot and change how we do things. We're not even really sure how we're going to register voters this time around, given the new voter suppression law that was passed last year. But we also focus on whatever the moment calls for. And there's been a lot of moments recently. And we are focusing right now on protest and pushing our elected officials to do more. And we will get started hopefully soon with our voter engagement and our voter registration. But right now, we feel we need to be pressuring our elected officials. I'll give you a little bit of background of how we got started. In 2017, I went to the Women's March. It was a last minute ticket that was available. I didn't know I was going to go until about an hour beforehand. I'd never been to a protest, so I was scared. You know, I think I'm no different than anyone else who might have anxiety about talking to people, being at a protest. And obviously a lot of that has changed. So I guess when I came back from the Women's March, I was really looking for something that I could grab onto. And so I went to a couple of meetings that came out of the Women's March. And interestingly enough, I think I was sitting like right about the two ladies with the blue right behind each other. I was sitting right here in this room listening to a presentation on gerrymandering. I had never heard of gerrymandering before. I didn't have that in high school for whatever reason. And I didn't really study government or politics. So I'm really no different than anyone else who hasn't done much before. When I left that room, I was so mortified about what I was hearing about gerrymandering that I really, really, really wanted to fix it. And so I signed up to get 300 signatures for the anti-gerrymandering petition with the League of Women Voters. And what I ended up doing was getting about 5,000 myself, in addition to managing the group in Cuyahoga County who is collecting signatures. So I don't know why I did that, but so after that, I decided to go work on a campaign in a heavily gerrymandered district, which would have been Betsy Rader when she ran in 2018. Some of you were on that campaign. Some of you I met there. I see you here in the room. And what I found was, after working there and working on Hillary Clinton's campaign, was that most people, I was in charge of volunteers, and most people are not comfortable talking to strangers. And especially now after COVID, I think that has really gone up. Also, we do the training to try to give people a framework to have those conversations. I think people learn the most when they go with our really awesome volunteers who are sitting right here. We've got a bunch of people here who are leads with Mobilize the Vote, and they are the ones that really know how to talk to people. Debbie was a principal with PEP, so that should give you a really good idea of her types of skills. And I feel like really fortunate to have people like Ellen who've chosen to spend their retirement with us. So, anyway, so what we try to do is we really try to get lower propensity voters to go out and vote. One of the problems with that was access to buildings, and it's primarily apartment buildings. Most of the people we talk to are renters who are less likely to turn out and have, you know, an annual saving or a savings of about maybe $5,000, where the average homeowner has a net worth of over $300,000. So, we focus on them because we know that they turn out less, they move more, and they're less likely to be informed for whatever reason. Probably because they're just trying to make ends meet. So, what we had to start, we started primarily with CMHA during the pandemic, where we were talking with people in public housing, and over time, we've been able to, build enough trust that we were able to get in for this election and previous elections, and also HUD buildings, as well as a lot of different nonprofits, including like Seeds of Literacy and a number of other organizations. So it's really not just voter registration, but voter engagement. And we really need to advise people of their rights, and because they keep changing. And a lot of people are very upset when they hear that in Ohio, there is an expiration date on your voter registration. So that's how we try to battle the purges, and also how we primarily the purges and all of the horrible things that we're doing here in Ohio. Anyway, so I think what's different, the outcomes of this have been that lower propensity voters are turning out, the people that we register, at a rate similar to the entire county. All right, so if the county turnout is 65%, our turnout for lower propensity voters is very similar to that. And when you go building by building, when you compare year over year, we've had increases of about 27% in turnout in those buildings. We do also register college students and people at Pride, and we do a lot of follow-up with the voters. Someone here asked me to just sort of explain the difference between NOVA and other groups like the ACLU, the Voting Rights Coalition, Honesty for Ohio Education, and then I know Katie's going to talk about the differences between us and red, wine, and blue. But the difference with us is that we are going into apartment buildings. We have not ever seen anyone doing what we're doing. And we know that it's effective. And we've tried different techniques, and we use a lot of data from the Analyst Institute to figure out where we're going to focus our energy. But like I said, right now, we're super focused on organizing protests so that people feel safe. There's a lot of protest groups popping up that we don't know who they are. And we at least want people to know that we're going to be there and do our best to keep people safe and comfortable. We've been going to Bernie Moreno's office on every Wednesday, and we're getting a lot of new people, which is great. So with that, I mean, if you please write down some questions, I'll be happy to answer them after Katie. You ready? Okay.
Yeah. Hey, are we gonna work out after this or what?
Yeah, that's
Why not? It's so actually I see trainers from my new gym here, so maybe I'll introduce you. Okay. All right. So thank you so much for having me. All right, I want to start with this. My dad recently visited, and he retold me a story he's told me throughout my entire life. You know those dad stories, right? Like usually it's like a groan, it starts with a groan, you've heard this, but I love every single time he tells me this story. So this is from 1979. My mom was pregnant with me at the time. And my dad went to, I was born in Atlanta, and this is where this happened. My dad went to a celebration of what would have been Martin Luther King Jr.'s 50th birthday. And Martin Luther King Jr.'s father, known around Atlanta as Daddy King, was there. And my dad actually had the opportunity, he was seated near him, he had the opportunity to speak to him very briefly. And my dad basically asked something like, how do you do it? How do you stay strong? They've taken your son, they've taken so much. And Daddy King's answer was, no man is strong enough to make me hate them. And that was a story that I was told from really birth in my family. I was raised in the South as a Christian. No man.
I don't think your mic is on. Oh, yeah, it's on.
No man is strong enough to make me hate them. Said by a very powerful messenger. And I honestly think maybe, I think it just came on better. Is that better? Okay. All right. I think maybe in times like this, that statement can almost feel controversial when we have leaders who are inflicting an enormous amount of harm and pain on people, and may well be deserving of hatred if there ever was a moment for that. But I personally, I don't find it useful. I think that they want us overheated. They want us with our hair on fire, our heads spinning around 360 degrees every moment so that we are distracted and unfocused. And we just get tired out and we throw up our hands and we go, I can't make a difference anyway. So what Red, Wine, and Blue is all about at its core, I mean, we have events and actions every single day, but I mean, at its core, what it's about is creating connection and community among people, locally especially, because we believe that that is the antidote to authoritarianism, to extremism, to all threats to our democracy. They want us divided so that instead of paying attention to the 1% we should actually be focused on, that they convince us there's 1% all among us that are a threat. And so when I think about that quote about no man is strong enough to make me hate them, it helps me stay focused, especially in times like this. And I think it's so challenging in times like this to find sources of focus. And what Red, Wine, and Blue ultimately does, and what Sue is doing with her organization, is bringing people together to be able to make a difference. And ultimately, people show up in a moment because they are mad that something has happened. They feel a sense of outrage. They learn about gerrymandering and they want to do something about it. But what keeps them engaged is the people with whom they're working with. It is that sense of community and connection, right? You all are nodding your head. You know, you do this for each other. Think about, it's just like a job, right? You're like, okay, I can stand working at that company for that organization. But if the people aren't great, if you don't love your team, you're not going to be around very long. So it's the same thing. So at its core, as we do this work, keeping that focus on the experience that we create together, that sense of community and connection is number one. So just to give a brief little backstory, I've worked in politics my whole career, over 20 years. I used to live in DC. That's where I met my husband, and he was from Shaker Heights, Ohio. And so I think I knew by my second date, like if there was good, like I was probably going to live in a place called Shaker Heights. I had never even been to Ohio at that point, but you know how these Shaker people are, you know, evangelists. So that is what happened. We moved here 12 years ago. I was still at the time telecommuting back to DC. I thought I had it made. I got to live in this wonderful community where I'm now raising my 2 young children, and then have this still, you know, exciting DC professional life. But then around the same time, actually, I was very impacted by the 2018 election. Concerned about Ohio and the direction we were going in. But at the same time, I was incredibly inspired by what we saw in those 2018 elections in terms of women's involvement. Women who had never engaged politically before were finding each other, whether they went to the Women's March or however they found each other, and they were self-organizing. So women doing this themselves, just like Sue did. You know, it's happening all over the country, and it had an enormous impact in those 2018 elections. In fact, that's what we need to conjure up and have happen in 2026 as well. So it's a real model. But I was really inspired, right? But I was really inspired by all these women. And based on my career of having built national organizations, my concern was, how do we sustain this? If there isn't intention around creating connection and community among all these women who are doing that in their hyper-local communities, how powerful could we be? And couldn't we actually sustain this if we created some sort of community for all of them together? Infrastructure, essentially, support, resources, training, so that this could happen all over the country in a sustained way, because it's hard work. I mean, she's working her butt off, you know, day in and day out. And so we get through these things by creating that connection. So fast forward, today, Red, Wine, and Blue actually has 50,000 members across Ohio, over 600,000 nationally. We have almost 700 local groups across the country, and more than 50, I believe, Robin, are in Ohio. 51 are in Ohio, new ones forming all the time. We truly are in a moment. 170 of the 700 groups across the country were formed since the inauguration. And Red, White, and Blue has brought in over 50,000 new members nationally since the inauguration. People are really looking for things to do right now. And our mantra for 2025 is, when they go low, we go local. I'll say it one more time. When they go low, which is every darn day, we go local. And that means finding your people within your community. And it takes all kinds, you know, like everybody doesn't have to do the same thing. We all have so many different skills and talents. I mean, in this room, like there isn't anything, I'm sure, that this room couldn't accomplish if we put our heads together. There is very little a group of women, I believe, cannot accomplish without like a Google Doc and, you know, just like 15 minutes of creativity. A sign up sheet, yeah, at all, right? And so everybody acting in their own way and bringing their own skills, like that is how movements are built. We don't all have to do the same thing. It's just everyone doing something. And so Red, White, and Blue is trying to create a welcoming pathway for all women. And, you know, men come along to these local group meetings too. We will make you feel welcome as well. But that weather right now, so what does that look like in this moment right now? It means together finding ways to make sure that we know how to protect immigrant children from illegal raids, right? It means making sure that trans children can be protected in our communities, to make sure that all of our kids can have access to learning real history, all these things. And it means preparing now for the elections that we have in Ohio this year, thousands of school board elections. Find out now who's on the, you know, if your school board you feel comfortable with, find out about your neighboring communities. You'd be surprised how contentious these elections can be. And they're so important. We have had a lot of success pushing back against extremism on school boards. Ohio has them in the odd years. Okay, so 2025, all school board elections take place across Ohio. And there have been real threats to our schools through school boards. You guys have heard about the book bans, right? All kinds of policy changes that really impact all of our kids, but you know, do so with this fear mongering that's really harmful to specific populations. And so we have an opportunity this year to send a message, because there's no message that politicians understand like election results. Okay, so, and then of course in 2026, we have statewide races in Ohio, we have our congressional races in Ohio, and yes, we have to deal with these gerrymandered districts, but at the same time, you know, we did pick up some state house districts just last year. And so making small gains where we can while we pursue structural fixes is incredibly important. And again, this is the language that politicians understand, okay? Winning elections, and we can do that. So look, in the meantime, I would love, we have women who have formed a local, we call our volunteers troublemakers, because we all gotta, you know, get out there and make some trouble. And so we have our program of groups across the country is called Trouble Nation. And some of the women who formed one in the Heights is here today. And, you know, or if you live further out, there's probably a group near you. If there isn't, we'd help you form one. We do everything. We do leadership training for folks, help you figure out how do I go about this? You know, we connect you with other people who have already worked on the issues that you want to work on, so you can learn from each other. And we provide sort of that coaching support all along the way. Once you're ready for your first meeting, we will invite everyone in our database who lives around you, because everyone wants connection as much as you do. And there's so much we can do when we come together. So I will wrap, I think, because I mean, the Q&A is the best.
Yeah.
But with this quote, in terms of I am thinking a lot right now, obviously Red, White, and Blue is a women's organization. And this forum today is about women's political participation. So I want to leave you with this. I study in all my spare time. I do think that academia and the study of resistance movements against authoritarianism globally is very useful when we are in a moment such as this, in need of protecting our democracy. There's two researchers called Erica Chenoweth and Zoe Marks. They're at Harvard. They have studied every resistance movement against authoritarianism globally in all of modern history, because they wanted to learn what are the components of successful resistance movements. The first question they wanted to answer is it true, as the nonviolent proponents claim, that nonviolence is more effective than violence? That is very much true. Here's something they also found. Aspiring autocrats and patriarchal authoritarians have good reason to fear women's political participation. Social movements that include large numbers of women tend to be more resilient, creative, and ultimately successful. So if that's not a call to engagement, I don't know what it is. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Candy and Sue, for sharing your time and the stories of your organizations. Very, very inspiring for us this morning, I think, don't you? Inspiring. If you'd like to receive weekly reminders of the forums, please add your contact information on the clipboard that will be passed around. If you're joining us virtually, please add your name and email address to the chat box. And now, this is time for our attendees to ask questions of our speakers. I'll turn the Q&A session over to Nancy and Debbie, and I want to mention that when they hand you a mic, please hold it just like this, just like I am, and have it pointed right at you pretty close, because it makes it easier for our virtual attendees to hear your question. And then if you're attending virtually, you can put your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll ask the speakers those questions.
Thank you so much for being here, both of you. I had a question for Katie. How did you come up with the wonderful name of Red, White, and Blue?
Thank you for asking. First, to be clear, the wine is a metaphor for, women gathering in living rooms, a festive environment, and anything can be in that wine glass. For example, coffee for me today. But I came up with the name because I really don't like how the right wing claims that they own patriotism. I believe that we are standing up for our country and American values right now so fiercely. If a democracy is an American value, right? And so I wanted something patriotic. And I also wanted, look, I just think, you ever notice that all the groups in politics kind of sound the same? Like, it's like America, voter, something, something America, right? It's just like, I wanted something different because red, white, and blue is really trying, there's so many people who want to do something but feel turned off by politics. And so I wanted to signal something else is going on here, and actually we can come together and do serious work and not take ourselves too seriously. And, look, it's not for everybody, but it sure does seem to be for a lot of people. So that's some of it.
The guys if they want to start one, should be red beer and blue.
Yeah, totally. You can drink beer in your wine cup too, though. That's the thing.
Would you address the say that?
Would love to. In fact, we have an event tomorrow night, which I'd love for everyone to join. Robin, maybe we can have something for that to make that easy to sign up for. We have an event tomorrow night. Congresswoman Amelia Dyke will be on, as well as Congresswoman Leger Fernandez. Representative Fernandez is the chair of the Democratic Women's Caucus in Congress, and Amelia, who we know because she's from the Akron area, is a vice chair, and they are working really hard against the SAVE Act. We're also going to have the Lead for Democracy from the Brennan Center, which is one of the leading voting rights organizations. And we're going to have a woman in Georgia who went viral across TikTok and Instagram last week for standing up to Republican Representative McCormick and, basically saying, why are you sponsoring this bill that could take away my right to vote as a married woman? Okay, so basically what the SAVE Act is it's the latest federal legislation that is a voter suppression bill. Of course, they are saying that this is to stop undocumented immigrants from voting, a thing that doesn't happen. It is illegal to vote if you are not an American citizen. That's why people don't do it. It comes with serious penalties. There has never been found for this ever to be a problem. But they try to, this is what they do, right? They try to make things into a problem because they know their agenda is so unpopular that they just need fewer people voting. So it can't be a real democratic check on their power. Instead, they want politicians choosing their voters instead of the other way around. And so basically the reason why the SAVE Act is so concerning is that for new registrations or any pre-registrations, for example, when you move, something a lot of people do every day, it would require either a passport or a birth certificate. Now, I changed my name when I got married. So my birth certificate actually doesn't match my license, you know, and so that would be a problem if I moved registering right now. There are, I think it's half of Americans do not have a passport. It's 67 million women in the United States who are in my situation. So we are talking about potential disenfranchisement of tens of millions of voters. So it's really important to be educating your networks about this. The current status is that it has a lot of sponsors, and we are going week to week, seeing if the House is going to put it on the floor. In the House, they said that this is one of their top priorities to pass, but we're pushing back hard against it. And so the vote keeps getting delayed and delayed. If they just delay it forever, that would be a huge victory if we never have the vote. If it does come to a vote in the House, it will likely pass, but we can stop it in the Senate because it would, this is legislation, not, you know, like Trump's nominees all got through, right? Because all they needed was a majority, and they have a majority in the Senate. This needs 60 votes to pass. So we have to make sure that anyone who claims that they support voting rights really understands what it's
And I would just like to add that the strategy that is being used in the Ohio State House and at the federal level is to throw all of this stuff at us. So even if we are doing whatever we can, whether we're calling our reps and whatever, it's still in the back of your mind as just one other thing that we need to think about and worry about. And a lot of us are really worried. We don't need more, right? And so just know that try not to let it get you down, even though I completely understand why it would. But just know that there's just a lot of stuff that they're just throwing at us and hoping that it will stick. And the State House does this all the time, where they bring up these awful pieces of legislation, and next thing you know, I mean, you don't hear about it again. It might even make it out of committee. I'm not saying that that's going to happen. We need to take this very seriously, but just keep in mind that that's a strategy. They're trying to wear us out. And the reality is that that's what motivates me, is if they are trying to wear us out, I am going to continue to fight back and keep going at it. So
Yeah,
that's right.
but we can win this one. Like, and we need a win. So let's get a win on this.
Thank you both for all the work that you do, and also for being here today. After the November election, Bernie Sanders was interviewed and said, if I were a worker, I wouldn't vote Democratic, given what the issues that the Democratic Party stands for. Now, I think what he meant was that we needed to reach out to working class voters and not simply appeal to the progressive instincts of folks with a college degree. What do you think?
I agree 100% that we need to be reaching out to people that we don't normally reach out to. And that was sort of my theory going into evolving as to what my group is going to be focusing on. These are the people that are left behind. They're more likely to be taken off the voter rolls. Call it, like, if you stay in one place, you're more likely to stay registered to vote. but there are so many more people that are sort of occupying even below working class right now. I would say, not necessarily poverty, and those are the people that we really, really, really need to be getting out to vote, because they're the ones that are most impacted by the decisions that are made at the federal and the state level. So I don't know, do you want to add anything?
So I get uncomfortable when anyone talks about things as a binary. Like we have to, it's this group of voters, not this group of voters. In Ohio, to win a statewide election, you have to do, this is just like a political analysis. I mean, for a Democrat to win a statewide election, they must do very, very well in the cities. And by that, I mean the 3 Cs, right? They must increase support each election year in the suburbs. And they must lose a little less badly in rural areas. And if you don't do all 3 of those things, you can't win. And so I think that sometimes in Ohio, I want to speak to Ohio, how this plays out is there can be sort of like racial tinges to the argument, like we need to be like white working class from rural areas. And I get concerned sometimes when I see politicians saying, well, that should be the focus. And then meanwhile, voters in cities, largely Black voters in cities, are sort of ignored or taken for granted. And we have to, we can't do that. People are people. Every voter is a persuasion voter in my mind. I think every voter needs to be persuaded of why to vote, who to vote for, and to be given a reason to show up. And I think sometimes we divide voters into, well, these are mobilization. They're definitely going to be with us, pat you on the head and just, shovel you into the polls. And over here, let's really spend our time convincing these people. So I don't disagree. I just sometimes these arguments, I think they're sort of like purposely polarizing. We're trying to like get a debate going, and absolutely we need to be talking to working class voters across races. But that's just something as Ohioans, I think we need to be really aware of, that we can't ever sacrifice sort of one piece of this complex and diverse coalition for another.
Yeah, I mean, we have to do everything. I really, and that requires everyone here to hopefully be doing something in your own way.
There's a question from our virtual audience. Where and when is the event March 3rd?
On the Save Act, that is going to be on Zoom. So anyone can join. It's March 3rd, tomorrow, Monday, at 8 p.m. and it'll last an hour, and there'll be lots to do, learn and do. But if you go to redwine.blue and click on events, it'll probably be one of the top 5 or so, since it's coming up so soon. I think we have about 5,000 people registered, so I'm excited. Join us.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. I do have a couple questions. So I wanted to ask you, when you go to Bernie Moreno's office, like what do you do and what is there to be expected? I'm just curious what to do to prepare. That's my
She might come with you.
Well, it evolves every time because we don't know what to expect when we get there, but we have a plan A, B, C, D, and ongoing, because they keep changing every time we show up. We have basically options. There are people who like to stand out on the street with a sign, not on the street, on the sidewalk, with a sign, which is at the federal courthouse downtown. And, we'll get a lot of affirmation and sometimes not affirmation as people drive by. And then this started out as the first time we met or went over there, the regional, I don't know what he does. The regional director, Max, met with us in the cafeteria. But every week something has been changing. So last week, what we did now know that calling is really important, and we have a phone bank on Wednesday morning to make sure that the phones are ringing off the hook while we're coming into the office. All right. So if you can't be out there or it's too cold or whatever, we encourage you to join that phone bank. But so you can be outside waving a sign, and you can also go inside and have your concerns on file. Like they have you fill out a form. They didn't even do that at first. So we've been pushing them to be better. We also have a list of demands, which include a town hall. I mean, that's just a fundamental responsibility of a legislator. But of course, we haven't made any progress, but we do know that we're getting under their skin. And so, and we're not mean, we're not rude. I might be a little impolite sometimes, but everybody else is really nice. So, anyway, and then we try to make people feel comfortable about going into his office. I know I was terrified the first time I went to Rob Portman's office. I'm like, am I going to see him? What do I say? And the reality is it's no different than going into, like, you know, the doctor's office and you just sit there and wait and fill out a form. It's not confrontational. We often get press there. Ellen has been quoted in the Washington Post, and recently there's a video of her answering some questions. And, you know, prepare for them to say that you're getting dark money. We are still waiting for a check. I mean, we have not been paid to do this work. I'm hoping that answers your question, but it's actually kind of fun. And we've had a lot of new people come who have never done this before. And it's a great way to sort of get your comfort level up because, like I said, it's not really confrontational. We have not had counter protesters, at least not at this rally. We are prepared for that. So, yeah, I hope that's a good explanation.
I have a comment and a question. My comment, first of all, is that my sister and I are both daughters of immigrants from World War II who saw Hitler speak and had been warning us for years about the dangers and how we could lose democracy. And so the whole flag thing really bothered me in that the Red seems to have confiscated our flag. So what she has done, and I want to bring this idea up, is we're flying our flags with blue streamers on them. So we're just buying blue ribbon and hanging it on the flag around the pole. So it's also flying along with the flag, just to show that there's a different flag person in this house. And then my question is, the person's name I don't see on here is Max Miller. Is there a reason? He's my rep, and I called his office, and I've also called both.
You actually have the list right behind. Well, just turn it over. You've got another handout there. We've got all the reps. Oh, I wonder if we forgot him.
And I just looked him up, by the way, and I didn't know that he is Bernie Marino's son-in-law.
Yep. No, and he's a piece of work too. You know. Okay, I'll make sure we put it on there. Apologies.
Hi, thanks for being here. Little town kid, can you hear me better there?
Yeah.
I noticed in the news recently that the Ohio legislature had made adjustments to the marijuana bill that passed. And I wanted to know what you thought about that, because I thought it created a bad precedent. It was essentially, the statement was that the voters didn't know what they were voting for.
They always say that.
Yeah, so I guess what my question to you is, what is happening with that, and are you pushing back? What do we need to do?
I mean, this was inevitable. It was not a constitutional amendment. So we knew that they were going to change it to however, you know, they want to change it. I mean, every single thing happening out of the Ohio State Legislature is worthy of pushback. And I think that one of the things that's incredibly important right now is it sounds like you're passionate about that issue. And so, or not, maybe just curious, whatever. But
I'm mostly passionate about democracy.
okay, my point is like, you can't do it all, and we need people who are passionate about each of these issues. You know what I mean? And so that's not an issue. Red, white, and blue is, you know, our issues tend to be more reproductive rights, public education, voting rights. Just because you have to have focus, you know, you can't do everything, but together we can't do everything. And so I think that what's happening was inevitable. You know, that's why, so the reproductive rights, amendment that passed at the same time in 2023 was a constitutional amendment. It required a lot more signatures to get on the ballot. It was a much higher bar. So it is just, stronger. Merle, do you want to answer this? Do you know?
No, I had a question.
Oh, okay. All right. I thought you might be answering her because you know all the things.
Could you wait for the mic?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not gonna say.
Thank you so much for all the work you're doing. I really appreciate it, and all of us do. But I'm with NOVA, Northeast Ohio Voter Advocates. And we register and give vote by mail to people in underserved areas, such as wards, which is Ward 7, Ward 5, those areas where turnout can be as low as 20 to 23% of all those that are registered. So we concentrate on the underserved population. And we register people, for example, at food pantries, when they're standing in line waiting for their food, and government agencies, because we are 501c3, and that allows us to get into some of the places where people are signing up for food stamps and so forth. So we're a little different since we're 501c3. But I want to mention one thing. I think I want to tell you a quick story about the idea of the people we're working with. We've had questions like, who is this person called gerrymander? That's an example. But what I want to make everyone aware of, there's a policy legislation. I'm saying House Bill 45 or 47. I haven't read it, but it's my understanding that before, when our volunteers would go out to register, they would fill out the form themselves and hand it to the person for their signature. This was efficient, it was accurate, and it worked. And now that legislation has been changed so that the person themselves has to fill out every part of the form, which is confusing to them. Some of them don't have much education to understand it. And it's just one more challenge for us to register people and get them to vote by mail or whatever. It takes a much longer period of time, especially when we were before standing in line going down the line and doing it very quickly and efficiently and accurately. So we have to be efficient. We have to be mindful of that because that takes effect on April 5th or April 7th. So the time is now to get out and register people and get them vote by mail for the May 6th election, which is an infrastructure bill for, money for roads and water and all of those infrastructure things. And then the other part is just whatever is on the ballot for specific places like school boards, you've already mentioned that, and so forth. So that's what I think we should be aware of moving forward, the importance of getting out there quickly before those rules come into effect.
So the other thing I would just like to add to that is the new voter ID law that was passed, which has created a lot of complications. Most people, we probably all have ID here, right? Has your ID ever expired and you just forgot about it? Okay, that's us. And we are high information voters, we know, right? And imagine that you have moved from place to place. Maybe you've had, 3 different addresses in the last year or two. You were registered, but because you moved and you didn't change it, and they have a way of figuring that out, they've taken you off the voter rolls. Or you can be somebody. So I guess my point with voter ID is that we are also doing that in addition to trying to adjust to the new this new law. We are similar to Nova in the sense that we do fill out the forms in advance. It's not just education, it's people who, you know, lost their glasses six prescriptions ago. All right, they can't see. They may not even be able to write. Some people don't want to register to vote because of literacy issues. So, you know, health issues, there's so many different things that it could be with those people. And they are being, this is 100% voter suppression. And even though people might have been registered last year, they may not be registered now. It's just nuts. So just thank you.
Thank you so much, and Ramadan Mubarak. Just to vent a bit, what a disgrace in the Oval Office on Friday. My parents are from India. My mom's sitting up there. It was so great to see the boisterous rally in Parma yesterday. From what I understand, what's most effective to reach our representatives is to call and leave voicemails if necessary. So I've been doing that for the Senate a few times a week if I can. But what I wanted to ask you is, what is the best way in terms of phrasing and even tone? Because I try to temper, I'm ticked off, but I try to temper that. And I try to emphasize, I'm looking for independent thinking. I want someone to step out and not just toe the party line. Thank you a lot.
Yeah, the calls are the most important thing, better than the emails for sure. Just so you know, the voicemails and the messages, if you speak to a staffer when you get them, it's a tally. So there's no sense in yelling, like save your energy for something else. Make clear that you are a constituent and what your position is on what you're calling about. Those are the two things that just need to be clear. Anything else you say does not really matter. It's just a tally, but that matters. The tally really matters, okay? And those calls actually for the State House, if you could add, you know, calling your reps for the State House, those calls actually have a massively larger disproportionate impact. Congress is important. They're getting a, you know, but it's just much bigger districts, right? So those really matter. In the State House, it's a big deal if they get more than like 10 calls on a piece of legislation, because people just don't even know who their state rep is. And so they get very nervous. So just to add that. And then I would say that the other thing in terms of where your messaging really matters and where we can't tell you what the best message is to talk to everyone you know, because it's great what you're doing, but you know people. And so, and they trust you because you're their friend or whatever. And so, or your family. And so it is most important to have those conversations. We know that those conversations have the most powerful impact. It's called, the fancy word is relational organizing, and it means organizing through your own relationships. That's our big focus at Red, White, and Blue, is getting people, because as nervous as people can be to talk to strangers, sometimes we're even more nervous to talk to the people we know. But we have got to, but we are the experts on our own relationships. And so I just would encourage you to make sure you're talking to them too. Call your reps and then call a friend.
And a lot of people think that, oh, well, nothing's changing. So, you know, why should I call? It's frustrating. Of course it's frustrating. They hope you go away, but I am not going away. All right. And neither are you. And just know that before you make the call. I am not as good as she is without, I mean, I have left some really embarrassing messages, I'm sure.
That's okay, they tallied it.
Yeah, yeah. And if you want to call multiple times, do that on different issues. Because the issues right now, I mean, there's a protest tomorrow at the VA to protest the changes to medical benefits to veterans. And you know, maybe that's important today, but later in the afternoon, there might be something else, like, you know, how Trump treated whatever happened yesterday or Friday, sorry. So I think it's okay to call multiple times. And if you mess up, call again. And it's okay to mess up. So yeah, I think that you get better at it And it's hard though when the issues are emotional for you. Most of them are today. And you know, the guy who's letting us in the door is also taking the phone calls on Wednesdays. So, and you know, we'll fill their mailboxes, keep calling until they're not filled anymore. They do have to empty them. And also, please focus on John Houston, because he's got to get reelected in about, 2 years. So, and he only has one office. He has no offices in Ohio. Yes.
Hi, my name is Marlena. I moved from New York to here 5 years ago. It's a culture shock, I'm not gonna lie. I first want to say, I think the GOP seriously underestimates the power of women.
Amen.
The tenacity, the strength, the courage. I mean, after all, there's a reason why God gave us the ability to give birth to children and not to give birth to four. So, and I'm really grateful for this group, Katie and the other groups that I've joined since I came here, because I really didn't know much about Ohio civics. And it's really helped me to connect with the community. And I say that because, I have been doing the things that need to be done urgently almost every day. I'm using that 5-star app and I work 10-hour days, but I'm doing it. I'll do it during my break. I'm not getting through to Husted. Moreno, once in a while, you get somebody who's pretty fresh at times that you'll talk to that pushes back on whatever your concern is. I've written to the Columbus Dispatch because they're taking complaints for those of us who can't get through to our senators. And I've shown up at different rallies at Tesla. I was in Farmer yesterday too, and it was extremely rural. So this brings me to my question. I know that we have a lot of things that we have to do as they pop up, and we have to pick and choose so we stay sane and strong. But there are also things that may seem that they're on the horizon. And I feel need to start being addressed now, and it may just be that I'm not aware of it. And the thing that concerns me greatly right now, and at times I'm losing sleep over it, if you can believe it, is Vivek Ramaswamy's, bid for the governor, being endorsed by Trump. And how much I love Dr. Act. From New York, I feel that she guided DeWine to handle COVID far better than Cuomo handled in New York. And I'm in the healthcare profession. I'm a PA, so I was there during COVID. So what is being done to ensure Dr. Acton wins? Because Swarmy has so much money. We saw what was done with Bernie Moreno. Bernie Moreno and Sherry Brown. So how do we even have that kind of money that that's going to be filtered?
Yeah. First of all, thank you and amen to the power of women. I've been thinking a lot lately about how, we talk about in middle age as women, it's like, I'm invisible, all of a sudden I used to be, visible, and now with age, I'm less visible. Y'all, that is our superpower. You know what I mean? Let's just keep flying under the radar and the incredible power of middle-aged women. Like, yeah. And thank you for everything that you're doing. I too worry about those things. You cannot underestimate the importance of 2026, not only in Ohio, but all across the country. Now, here's what I'll say. We can win statewide elections still in Ohio. Let's remember, gerrymandering is about districts. Gerrymandering doesn't impact a statewide election. It does. I mean, just because when people in their individual districts feel less empowered, then they're going to be less, or, driven to perhaps vote. But when we are going to have next year a US Senate race and a governor's race, we have an opportunity here to really drive turnout. And we talked before about how the cities, the suburbs, and rural areas are, incredibly important. And I think that understanding, really think about 2026 through the lens of how important 2018 was. And I want to remind you, Rich Cordray only lost by 3 points. And suburban support has increased since then for Democratic candidates who have run statewide. We have lost additional support in our rural areas. It's sort of teetered, but and we had significant we had low turnout in the cities, in particular in Ohio in 2024. I believe it's 90-some thousand less people voted in Cuyahoga County in 2024. So we've got real work to do here in our county and getting our, everyone we know engaged, but I can't emphasize enough, the language the politicians understand is elections, and now is the time to start organizing. So try not to lose sleep. I know it's hard. I do sometimes too, but reach out to others who care about this too. And remember that, look, we're a symphony. We work together. I love how Connie Schultz always says, like, I will hold the note for you, recognizing that when you need to take a breath, I can step up, and you're going to do that for others too. So we've got the benefit of time between now and then. But I'm all in on 2026 right with you, sister.
I am very concerned about public education. I don't hear it brought up much, especially on the national level, but especially in Ohio. 90% of children in Ohio attend public schools. Right now, Ohio's putting $1 billion in school vouchers, which pay students out of public education.
And in 70 counties, public schools are the only option. 70 out of 88 counties.
And just had a wonderful forum here with Dan Heinz on school vouchers. And so my question is, what is Red, Wine, and Blue doing to advocate for public education?
Which day of the week, Merle? I mean, this is public education.
I mentioned the governor
Yeah.
in his budget that he has proposed, he wants to put more money into charters and vouchers and
Yeah.
take more money.
Absolutely.
away from public education.
I believe we have an event this week on school funding Thursday. Is that a statewide event? We're also doing a lot locally around educating about vouchers and how this does move money away from public schools. I think that, look, at the end of the day, all these culture war issues are about undermining trust in public schools so that they can defund public schools and privatize. I think if there is such an opportunity for bipartisan pushback on this, we do have so many, like I said, 70 out of 88 counties in Ohio, do not have, public schools are the only option.
Kentucky got rid of it.
Yes, they had a ballot initiative.
Kentucky's better than us.
Well, they have a
They
government.
had a ballot, there were 3 ballot initiatives across the country in 2024 in support of privatization and vouchers. They all lost.
But they're also using tax dollars to build private schools in those areas that don't have them.
That's right. And that's a new move from Huffman. I understand. This isn't, you're right. It's not, voters say they want to hear about it more. We need to push our elected leaders to talk about this more. I mean, if being pro-public school is a majoritarian position in Ohio and all across this country, and we need to own it. So we're doing a ton on that education wise, week in and week out. Our local school boards do really matter, as you know, as someone is a state school board member. So just know that the more we talk about that issue, like, the better. Yeah.
Thank you.
I just would like to plug another organization too, Honesty for Ohio Education. Follow them however you can on social media, go to their website. They've come out of this whole fight as well. The biggest fight that I'm seeing is here in Cleveland Heights, because they're the most impacted by vouchers in the entire state.
Yeah.
So it's very local. And, I guess, we're really, we talk to people about that. Why should I vote? It's not the presidential election. And, I guess, and the one thing I forgot to mention is we do this year in, and you do too, year out, knocking on doors, talking to people and trying to keep them up on what's going on. So that to me is also part of why what we're doing is successful, and not waiting for somebody to sort of swoop in and fix things for us. We gotta do it ourselves.
Yeah. I just wanted to plug Dr. Christina Collins, who's the executive director of Honesty, is going to be a guest on my radio show next week on Saturday. So I just wanted to say, please tune in on Saturday at 1 o'clock, WRUW 91.1.
Christina.
Thanks again to our speakers. Thank you so much. And thank you to the whole forum committee members working together to make this hybrid forum happen. Thank you everyone who attended either virtually or in person today. Join us 2 weeks from today, Sunday, March 16th, when the forum topic is immigration, net drain or net gain, effects of illegal immigration on America. And now you're welcome to attend the 10:15 Sunday service upstairs in the sanctuary or on your UCC YouTube page. Reverend Dr. Randy Partain will lead the service today with the topic, Becoming One Another's People. Mike Carney, Aaron Burkle, and our chancel choir will offer music of hope and perseverance. To see what else is happening in our congregation, check out our website at uucleveland.org. Thanks again for joining us and have a great week, everyone.